All right, well, I'm gonna call this meeting to order because we do have a quorum. A roll call, please, Rose.
Member Kaplan?
Here.
Member Childress?
Yes.
Carrot Desart? Here. Member Eckhoff? Member Galassi?
Here.
Member Zay?
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. First of all, I move to approve 24-2316 legislative minutes from the regular meeting on Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. Second. We have a motion and a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Any public comments?
None.
All right. I just wanted to, as far as the chair's report, today we'll hear from our state lobbyists about what to expect when the state legislature convenes in November. And by way of chair's remarks, some people are pretty new to this board. And so I wanted to reintroduce you to our state lobbyists. Do we have Mark Pullis on the line yet? Okay, then we're going to introduce you to John Chip Hughes, our representative from Marquardt and Hughes is Chip Hughes, who has served. You're talking over his fantastic intro.
I know.
All right, so Chip Hughes, what hasn't he done? He's a funeral director. I didn't know that about you. He's a funeral director and co-owner of Hughes Funeral Home in Addison. He's also a firefighter and a certified paramedic. His commitment to serving others and tending to their needs led him to join Marquardt and Company. You have to tell me how to pronounce it because I always pronounce it incorrectly. He joined them in 2012 as a lobbyist and consultant, and now is a partner. Chip has more than 15 years experience working with legislatures on both the state and national level, and he knows how to work in a bipartisan manner. Chip takes pride in the trust he has built with legislators on both sides of the aisle. Welcome, Chip.
Thank you. Thank you for that very, very nice intro. Nice to see everybody. We were all in different directions today, so I appreciate you allowing me to join via Zoom. And I'll give you kind of just a brief overview of where we're at. And then obviously happy to take any questions. I know you guys have had a little bit of a long day. So thank you, Madam Chair, as always. Ladies and gentlemen, as we sit here today, October 8th, the legislature is essentially at ease. The focus is 100% on election season. And I know some of you in this room are up for election this cycle, so you know exactly how that feels. So moving forward, what's happening right now, currently as we speak, the governor, Speaker Welch, Senate President Harman are with a delegation in Japan on a trade mission for economic development. Chair Desart mentioned in her legislative remarks during county board, the new data center breaking ground in DuPage County. That's a big focus of the administration is data centers. So I think, technology is certainly a topic of conversation as they are overseas in Japan, but I think just general business development and investment in Illinois is on the agenda as well. You mentioned veto session. Veto session is scheduled for post-election. So they're scheduled to meet November 12th through the 14th. Then the following week, November 19th through the 21st. Traditionally, the veto session is structured for, as it is described, taking action on gubernatorial vetoes. The last couple of years, because we have the same party in control of both chambers and the governor's mansion, we really haven't seen much veto action, which is pretty much to be expected. So this year, there is some talk of potentially condensing veto session down into a couple days, or there's been some rumor that veto session may be scrapped. All in all, we'll know that as we get a little bit closer. How does that work? Well, the legislature and the General Assembly would still have another session to take action before the new General Assembly is inaugurated. They refer to that as lame duck session. Those dates are not announced yet. Usually they're 4 to 5 session days, give or take, early in January, right before the new General Assembly is inaugurated. So that's kind of the structure we look at legislatively moving forward in terms of, people in Springfield. Obviously, if they cancel any veto session days, we'll let you know that right away. big ticket items that are kind of outstanding. This is a very rumor heavy time of year. A lot of people will talk about initiatives coming in veto session or lame duck session. Most of those tend to fizzle out. As you know, the regular session starts in January and ends in May, and it typically takes that long to pass legislation, or at least work on it over that course of time. So the ability to move something in veto session or lame duck really requires an effort by all the parties to have non-controversial legislation, or at least supermajority votes in both chambers. So some of the big ticket items that are outstanding as we speak today, you're all well aware or well versed in our RTA funding issue. Many of you have participated. I know we hosted one of those meetings. The Senate Transportation Committee has taken that initiative on. I believe, don't quote me, they had 6 regional meetings all throughout the city and the collars. I may be off on that number, so forgive me. Both Mark, myself, Jeremy, and Chair Conroy have had extensive conversations with the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, articulating our concerns about how this legislation may or may not look in terms of governance structure. The reason that they are pursuing this so aggressively is the RTA and its member agencies are looking at a give or take $700 million fiscal cliff here at some point in FY25, which is going to be has to be addressed at some level. The chair of the committee's perspective was, it would be difficult to add funding to that organization without some structural reforms, which in there lie the devil in the details of what does the structure look like? What do the collars representation on the RTA look like? So those are all issues that we're working on at this time. We still don't have a real solid framework of what and if the finished product will look like. There's talk of that being done in lame duck. There's talk of that being done in the next session. It really just depends at this point on who you talk to and which chamber they're in. Always talk this time of year about a supplemental state budget with appropriations moving around. I've not heard any real structure to that, but that chatter may be related to the tough vote on an RTA or any other revenue enhancements that they would have to have some sort of supplemental appropriation for capital that may or may not materialize. That's just being talked about at the moment. Anyone who watches the local news knows there's some friction within the city of Chicago. Wherever you land on that, I guess you land on that, but that tends to at some point have at least some legislative oversight at least introduced. Whether that will come to fruition or not remains to be seen, but there's some talk, especially on the Chicago Public Schools front. There are some members, especially those who passed or spearheaded the effort to elect a Chicago school board, to be involved in that issue. Another outstanding issue I don't think will probably see the finish line in veto session or necessarily lame duck unless something changes is the stadium funding issues. We're all well aware the White Sox and the Bears are looking for new stadiums. They have requested some public funding to that. The governor's administration and quite frankly, the General Assembly have been very resistant to that, to put any sort of public funds onto these sports facilities without some sort of tangible benefit back to the taxpayers. So that's my brief update of where we sit right now, and more than happy to take any questions.
Member Chaplin?
Yeah, thanks, Chip. Good to hear from you. So I had a request. I don't know if you can do this or not, but in August, the Darien Park District had a dispute with the clerk's office about whether they could use the clerk could use the park district for a polling place. And it was going to come before the board because the year before the park district had this dispute with the clerk, it went to court and the court sided with the clerk. Then the park districts had the legislation changed, and now the legislation reads that these disputes come before a county board. Okay, so I don't think that that's a good legislation. I don't think that an issue like elections should be brought to a partisan county board. I think it should go back to remain in front of a judge. It should be litigated in court, not on the county board floor. So I don't know, I could send you this memo from our Connor McCarthy that sent this out to the board, but I think it's really important that we get that change back to have that litigated in a court, not on a bipartisan county board floor where it can just blow up into a hot mess. So.
Yeah, Connor, if you could,
I'll
or
send you language.
Chaplain, if
Yeah,
you
could
could
you
do
send
that to me,
Thank you.
I'll take a look. I assume that must have been in that election omnibus bill. I'll
Yeah.
do something to
Yep.
see who put that in, and maybe we can wrap our brain around that. But yeah, if you would send that to me, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because I think everybody was, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember that on the agenda, but everybody was uncomfortable with it. And I'm thankful that it was pulled because Darian ended up saying, okay, the clerk can have her polling place there. So, yeah, so that's important. Thank you. That's all. I have.
Sure.
Member Rutledge?
Thank you, Chair Dessart. I'm not on this committee. I'm lurking in the corners here. Chip, you talked about the data center. But my question on that is, we seem to be producing more renewable energy, solar and wind, but we're using that up as quickly as we do that. And my understanding is that the AI process requires a lot of electricity and resources. So are they addressing that because AI is becoming more and more prevalent and it's kind of negating our efforts for renewable energy?
Yeah, so I'm going to tiptoe through this one because I'm certainly not by any means an expert, and I would argue barely fluent in this arena. But obviously, you see these data centers go into places that have ample power supply. In terms of generation, I know there are targets that were passed a couple of years ago here in the state to move to renewables. So I do think that's all part of the plan. I know the administration certainly supports that. I know the biggest hang up that I had heard over the course of time is the transmission of that renewable energy, how we actually get it into the system. So I apologize for not a direct answer because I just don't have one, but I know that is also a focus of the governor's administration. So I would imagine that they have not left that out of the conversation.
Thanks, Chip.
Member you?
Thank you. So changing topics again, I'm actually really interested to know if during veto session, Karina's bill will be able to be passed. Bob Berlin actually came up to me the other day and said that they had worked out a bunch of stuff. He was really in favor of Karina's bill. He said that lots of the sheriffs were now in favor of it as well, and gun safety advocates and so many domestic violence advocates obviously are really pushing hard for this bill to pass. Do you know what the chances are for veto session?
Hard to handicap, but I can say that I've not been direct in conversation. So what I'm telling you is a little bit of what I'm hearing, but I know there's been a tremendous amount of work done on that piece of legislation to try to get it to the point where it's soup that and the Senate can pass it. I know the Senate president had indicated a willingness to see that come to the finish line. So I think, the stars kind of align and give you some hope that it's going in the right direction. I just can't speak to the nitty gritties of how far apart they are or how close they may be at this point, but I do know they're working toward resolution. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Excuse me.
Member
If I may,
Chapman?
is Karina's bill, I can't remember, is that on our legislative? It is, okay, so we need to keep pushing that.
Absolutely. I have a question, Chip. I'd like to go back to the RTA, and I attended the meeting in Naperville along with Member Garcia and Member Chaplin. And I know a lot of us are asking you to look into your crystal balls, so you might not know the answer, but I think as a customer of the RTA system, it makes a lot of sense for MetroPay's CTA to be under one umbrella as far as to keep, individual fares down and generate financial dollars to keep the infrastructure, secure. Anyway, my point is, with all of those individual meetings about combining the RTA, what are you hearing about the likelihood of, am I making sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
What is the
understand.
likelihood of them all being under one umbrella?
No, I understand. I think
Good.
that will be, if this becomes an end product, there will be some sort of parent organization, whether, and now the case, and just to back up, all 6, and again, I apologize if there were 7 hearings, had a different focus. You know, some were on public health, some were on mental health, some were on accessibility. So they tried to cover the sphere. But I think at the end of the day, the case for a parent organization, governing body, so to speak, was made very well. I think the collars, we made a very good case publicly. We've certainly made it very, privately in one-on-one conversations with members, that representation is absolutely paramount, because quite frankly, we're funding a large portion of this. And, we have residents in DuPage who rely on public transit for varying reasons, right? Some people need to get downtown to work. Some people need to go to the grocery store. Some people go to the doctor. So I think our case has been made very strongly of how important this is and how important it is to the county. Our concern, quite frankly, at first was it was a just Chicago takeover, and we were just going to be chunking in money and not having any say in the quality of service that our residents enjoyed. So I know that wasn't your question, so I apologize. But yes, I do think there will be a governing body. I don't think they'll decentralize. I don't think that would make sense.
And did I hear you say that Chicago Public Schools have a big say in this decision?
No, I'm sorry. Those were separate things. That was just kind of an issue that was floating around that's getting some attention from legislators, is the public schools issues that are going on in Chicago. So yeah, sorry, 2 separate issues.
Any other questions from the committee or not committee? All right, Chip, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Always great seeing you.
Yeah, thanks. Always a pleasure to be with you guys. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have Mark Pullis on? Okay, we do not. So in that case, I'm going to ask for any old business? Any new business? All right, without objection, we are adjourned.